Under the blinding lights of Congress, Ivanka Trump mocked Jasmine Crockett, but one fiery reply flipped the nation upside down. What began as an insult became the most shocking downfall in political history. Can one woman's truth bring a legend of privilege to her knees? Stay with us. This is a story worth every second of your time. The Capitol trembled under the flash of cameras. Reporters shouted as the marble doors opened to the hearing of the decade. On the giant screen, the words burned, "Federal hearing Crockett versus Ivanka Trump defamation case." Inside, silence hit like thunder. Jasmine Crockett entered, first black, suit calm eyes, every step carved with purpose. She looked like justice walking into fire. Across the table, Ivanka Trump waited in flawless white diamonds, catching the light, her smile thin and sharp as a blade. Everyone knew why they were here. On Good Morning America, Ivanka had said some people rise by shouting, not by merit. The country knew exactly who she meant. The clip exploded across America, sparking outrage and fury. Now the world was watching, millions holding their breath as one question filled the air, like electricity. Can a single sentence destroy a reputation and a dynasty? The air inside the Capitol felt charged, still humming from the storm outside. The marble doors sealed shut and the lights dimmed just enough for the cameras to catch every flicker of expression. The chairman lifted his gavel, the sound cracked through the chamber like thunder. The hearing will now come to order. Every eye turned to the front row, where two women sat facing each other across history itself. One stood for power, the other for principle. Ivanka Trump adjusted the cuff of her ivory jacket, the picture of calm confidence. Her smile never wavered as she leaned toward the microphone. "I spoke about work ethic," she said, voice smooth as glass. "If someone feels insulted, perhaps they already know they belong to that category." A ripple of gas moved through the gallery. Cameras zoomed in. The line landed like a dagger in silk. Across the aisle, Jasmine Crockett did not flinch. Her expression was unreadable, her silence louder than the applause that never came. Then Jasmine rose slowly, her chair scraping softly against the floor. Her tone was even, but every word hit like a drumbeat. No one builds their reputation by tearing down someone else's dignity, especially not when they hold a microphone that reaches the entire nation. The air tightened. Even the press stopped typing. Jasmine turned toward the massive screen behind her, raising a small remote control. With a single click, the screen burst alive with a series of emails. The audience leaned forward, hungry for truth. On the screen, glowing in bold text, were the words, "Use that line. People love conflict. It'll trend." Gas rolled across the chamber like a wave. The heading above the email made it undeniable, a direct exchange between Ivanka Trump and the show's producer. A female senator near the dais whispered, "She planned it." The sentence burned on the wall like a confession. Jasmine walked toward the center aisle, heels striking steady, deliberate beats on the marble floor. She pointed directly at the message, her voice slicing through the silence. "This was no accident," she said. "This was strategy. When you wrote to your producer, 'People love conflict,' you weren't talking about conversation, you were talking about America. And you used me as the spark." Ivanka tilted her head, a soft, mocking laugh, breaking the tension for just a second. "I don't control public reaction, Congresswoman," she said, her tone cool and patronizing. "If people talk, maybe it's because you chose fame through controversy." The remark hit like a slap. Murmurs rose again. The crowd divided between disbelief and outrage. The camera lights flickered, feeding off the drama like oxygen to fire. Jasmine didn't blink. Her eyes stayed locked on Ivanka's. "No, ma'am," she said, voice turning sharp cold. "I chose to be known for the truth. You chose to profit from humiliation." The words hung in the air, heavy final. The hearing room went dead silent. You could almost hear the camera shutters freeze mid-click. Across the country, millions were watching live. On every television, the feed from CNN cut to a red banner, "Crockett's statement stuns the hearing." In living rooms, diners, and offices across America, the balance shifted. Viewers who had tuned in out of curiosity now felt something else, sympathy, anger awakening. For the first time, the question wasn't about who spoke louder, but about who spoke right. And inside that chamber, under the blinding white lights, the nation realized the fight had only just begun. The tension hadn't eased, it only sharpened. The chairman gave a small nod, signaling for the next round. The cameras zoomed in the air, almost humming with electricity. Ivanka's attorney rose first, his voice calm, but commanding, echoing off the marble walls. "My client has every right to comment on social behavior," he declared. "This is not defamation, it is freedom of opinion." His words were rehearsed, polished, wrapped in legal armor, but they sounded cold in the room, now thick with judgment. Jasmine stood. The light from above caught her face, half shadow, half fire. Her voice was steady but carried the kind of conviction that made everyone else sit still. "Freedom of speech is not a license to humiliate others in public," she said. "She has an audience. She has power. She has money. What do I have? My dignity." And she used it as a punchline. A low murmur rippled through the gallery. The phrase used it as a punchline hung in the air like smoke. Even the chairman looked uneasy. Jasmine clicked the remote again. The next slide appeared, a flood of screenshots from social media. The chamber gasped. Thousands of comments filled the giant screen, scrolling like an avalanche of cruelty. "She's loud like all of them." "This woman doesn't belong in Congress." Another. "She's playing the victim again." The ugliness was raw, undeniable. It wasn't just words. It was a mob. Jasmine turned back toward the audience, her tone slowing, each syllable deliberate, surgical. One sentence from her, Jasmine said, and an entire community gets dragged backward by decades. "This isn't free speech anymore. This is psychological warfare." The words detonated like a charge. Ivanka's composure finally cracked. She leaned forward, voice rising sharper than before. "Don't make me the symbol of society's flaws," she shouted, breaking her own calm. "I am not responsible for your sensitivity." Her words echoed through the hall, bouncing off marble in fury. The gallery stirred, some gasped, others muttered. The cameras caught every flash of anger in her eyes. It was the first time Ivanka Trump looked truly cornered. Jasmine didn't flinch. She took one slow step forward, closing the distance. Her voice lowered, but its steel only deepened. "You're right," she said. "You're not responsible for my sensitivity, but you are responsible for your cruelty." The sentence landed like a verdict. A heartbeat of silence followed, then another. Somewhere in the chamber, a single clap broke the stillness, then another. Within seconds, the entire back row of senators joined in their applause, soft but deliberate, a statement more powerful than words. Ivanka froze, her lips pressed tight. The room seemed to tilt, her perfect confidence beginning to fracture. The cameras stayed locked on her face, catching the moment her proud calm turned to brittle silence. The hearing room had shifted. The balance of power had changed hands. And for the first time, Ivanka Trump looked like someone realizing that words, her favorite weapon, had just turned against her. The room was still reeling from the last exchange when the chairman adjusted his glasses and spoke. "We have one more witness." The doors at the back of the chamber opened, and a man in a gray suit walked in, clutching a sealed envelope. The cameras followed him as he stepped to the center. "State your name for the record," the chairman said. The man cleared his throat. "Evan Miles," he replied, "production technician for Good Morning America." The room fell silent again. Jasmine folded her arms, waiting. Ivanka shifted in her seat, her jaw tightening. Evan placed the envelope on the table. Inside, he said, "is the raw footage what the public never saw." The technicians connected his drive to the projector. The lights dimmed. On the massive screen behind the dais, the image flickered to life. The timestamp glowed in the corner. The sound of light chatter filled the chamber, Ivanka Trump in the green room, makeup brush grazing her cheek. Her voice, calm and low, broke through the static. "She's too emotional," Ivanka said, glancing toward the monitor. "Don't cut it. People love watching her lose control." Gasps rippled through the chamber, like wind through broken glass. For a full 5 seconds, no one moved. Reporters scrambled to right, cameras zoomed in, pens shook against notepads. One female senator covered her mouth. Another whispered, "My God." The clip continued to play on loop, Ivanka's tone clear, deliberate, no hesitation, no remorse. The evidence was devastating. Jasmine didn't rush to speak. She just stood, eyes locked on the screen, letting the truth echo louder than any argument. Finally, she stepped forward. Her voice rolled through the hall like distant thunder, low, unhurried, absolute. "This is not a slip of the tongue," she said. "This is a broadcast strategy. This is televised humiliation. Mrs. Ivanka Trump, you turned a black woman into entertainment. Her words cut through the marble chamber. No one blinked. A few journalists forgot to breathe. Ivanka's control cracked. She shot up from her chair, palms slamming the desk. I did not humiliate anyone, she shouted. You're staging a performance to play the victim. Her voice rang with fury, but it sounded smaller now, desperate under the glare of 100 lights. The chairman's gavel struck once, but the tension was uncontainable. Jasmine turned slowly, eyes sharp as glass, her tone almost a whisper, yet clear enough to pierce the silence. No, Mrs. Trump, she said. I'm not performing. I'm holding up a mirror. The words landed like a blade sinking deep. For a heartbeat, no one moved. The cameras panned across the two women. Ivanka's chest heaved, anger and fear flashing behind her polished facade. Jasmine stood motionless, shoulders squared, a beam of white light crowning her like armor. The chamber itself seemed to hold its breath. That moment, Ivanka trembling, Jasmine unshaken, felt less like politics and more like judgment. And as the final frame of the clip faded to black, everyone in that hall understood this was the second climax, the moment when power bowed its head before conscience. The clip had ended, but the shock hadn't. The hearing room was still trembling under the weight of what had just been seen. Reporters whispered over clattering keyboards, flashes erupted like gunfire, and voices overlapped in disbelief. The chairman slammed his gavel once. Order, he shouted. Congress is not a stage. But even he looked shaken, his hand trembling slightly as he set the gavel back down. The air felt electric, every breath tight, every camera focused on Ivanka Trump. Ivanka rose abruptly, her white suit catching the glare of the lights. Her voice was sharp, but it quivered beneath the surface. I have been defamed, she snapped. Attacked by edited clips and words torn from context, Congresswoman Crockett is turning this chamber into a court of emotion. She pointed straight across the aisle, finger-trembling eyes blazing with fury. The microphones caught her every word, and her anger became part of the broadcast. Millions watched, leaning closer to their screens as her composure began to crack. Jasmine didn't move. Her voice was calm but firm, slicing through the noise like a clean blade. If you think this is emotion, she said, then maybe you've never understood what humiliation feels like on live television. She took a slow step forward, eyes unwavering. I don't have a media team. I don't have a director. I don't have a studio. All I have is my voice, and you turned it into entertainment. Her tone wasn't loud, but it carried the weight of every insult hurled her way since that broadcast. A hush fell as she lifted her hand toward the technician. Let's talk facts, she said simply. The lights dimmed again, and the screen behind them flickered to life. It showed an internal rating chart from Good Morning America. The red bars spiked upward, 46% audience growth in the week following Ivanka's remark. Next to it, an email appeared in the stark white text from the show's executive producer, excellent delivery. The controversy worked. Gasps echoed across the room like thunderclaps. Jasmine turned back to the dais, her expression steady but burning with quiet conviction. This is profit made from humiliation, she said. No accident, no misunderstanding. This was crafted, broadcast, and sold like merchandise. The chamber erupted in murmurs. Some senators nodded grimly. Others whispered to one another. A few even tapped their desks in restrained applause. The sound of camera shutters filled the silence between every heartbeat. That was when Ivanka broke. She slammed her hand on the table so hard the microphone squealed. I built my brand on integrity, she shouted, voice cracking. You have no right to trample me just to lift yourself up. Her fury filled the room like static. The camera zoomed closer, catching every glint of anger in her eyes. Jasmine met her gaze calm as stone. I don't need to trample anyone, she said. The truth stands on its own. The words landed like a final gavel strike. The chairman pounded the table again, calling for order. But it was too late. The chamber was already on fire. Reporters rushed to file their stories, the glow of screens lighting every face. CNN's red banner appeared within minutes. Crockett pushes Ivanka to breaking point. Live. And inside the Capitol, no one could deny it anymore. What had begun as a hearing had become a war of morality fought under the brightest lights in America. The chamber still buzzed from the previous explosion, when the chairman leaned forward, his voice echoing through the microphones. "Congresswoman Crockett," he asked, "do you have any further evidence to present?" The room fell silent again. Jasmine didn't answer right away. She took a long breath, eyes focused on the desk before her, then slowly opened her leather briefcase. Inside was a single cream-colored envelope, sealed and marked by hand. She lifted it carefully, the sound of paper brushing leather cutting through the silence. "I have one document," she said evenly. "It's not from the show itself, but it speaks directly to motive." Every camera zoomed in. Every heartbeat seemed to stop. She stepped forward and placed the envelope on the desk, sliding it toward the committee clerk. "This letter," she continued, "was sent to me by a producer from Good Morning America after the broadcast. It has never been made public." The clerk nodded nervously, slit the envelope open, and unfolded the letter. The paper trembled in his hands. His voice shook as he began to read. "Dear Mrs. Crockett, I'm sorry. I witnessed Ivanka Trump instructing the production team to set you up with questions meant to provoke you. When I objected, she said, 'If she gets angry, we'll have the best show of the month.' I haven't slept since that day. I am submitting the full audio recording of the production meeting." The room erupted before the last word left his lips. Reporters leapt from their seats, the sound of cameras exploding in flashes. The chairman slammed his gavel again and again. "Order! Order!" he shouted, but no one could hear him over the roar. Gasps, shouts, and whispers filled the air, like a storm breaking inside marble walls. Ivanka's face drained of color. Her lips quivered. Her hand clenched the chair so tightly her knuckles turned white. The camera lights reflected off her eyes, wide and desperate. A senator rose from the back row, voice firm and cold. "Mrs. Trump," he said, "do you have a response?" Ivanka stood unsteady, her voice trembling as much as her hands. "I only wanted to protect the show's image," she cried. "Everyone does it. Everyone in media plans emotion. It's how television works." Her words cracked halfway through. The microphones picked up the waver, the helpless tone of someone trying to cling to control as it slipped away. Jasmine didn't flinch. She waited until the echo died, then spoke soft, steady, merciless. "No, ma'am," she said. "Everyone wants to be respected, but only those afraid of truth need to stage humiliation to feel powerful." A deadly silence followed, the kind of silence that roared louder than sound. Every camera zoomed in close on Ivanka Trump's face. Tears slipped down her cheek, glittering under the bright white lights. She tried to straighten her back to keep her composure, but her breathing betrayed her short, shallow, uneven. Jasmine took one slow step back, her eyes lit with conviction, her voice steady as steel. "You wanted the best show of the month," she said. "Well, here it is, the show where America finally sees the true face of power on camera." The words hit like a verdict. Reporters froze mid-sentence. The senators said nothing. Even the chairman stopped his gavel mid-air. For a long moment, the only sound in the room was the mechanical hum of the cameras recording everything. The truth was no longer hidden. It was alive, breathing, undeniable. And in that instant, the nation watching from home realized this wasn't just a hearing anymore. It was judgment playing out live on air. The words of the letter were still hanging in the air when silence swallowed the entire chamber. Not a whisper, not a breath. Reporters froze mid-note, their hands suspended above keyboards. Every camera turned toward Ivanka Trump. She wasn't smiling anymore. Her shoulders trembled, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. The marble room that had echoed with outrage moments ago now felt like a tomb. The chairman rubbed his forehead, voice low but firm. "Mrs. Trump," he said before the committee votes, "do you wish to say anything?" Ivanka pushed back her chair. The sound of metal scraping the floor was louder than any shout. She stood tall but looked smaller than she ever had. Her voice wavered, a mix of pride and defeat. "I am not perfect," she began. "I admit I manipulated the media. I thought I could control the story. But I forgot real people, real emotions. They're not props for performance." Her voice cracked on the last word. She stopped, swallowing hard as a single tear traced a line down her cheek. She didn't wipe it away. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Crockett," she said softly. "Not just for the words, but for the arrogance that blinded me." The room seemed to exhale all at once. Jasmine rose slowly, her expression unreadable. She didn't look at Ivanka like an enemy. She looked at her like someone finally telling the truth. "I accept your apology," Jasmine said, her tone calm but resolute. "But an apology only has value if it changes how we treat one another." The words landed with quiet power. The cameras zoomed in on both women, one in white, one in black, standing under the same beam of light. Power and conscience facing each other at last. For a long moment, neither spoke. The silence between them carried more weight than all the arguments before. The chairman glanced between them, then cleared his throat. His voice carried through the hall, steady and solemn. "The committee has reached its conclusion," he announced. "We find that the statements made by Mrs. Ivanka Trump constitute defamation against Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. The act involved elements of financial gain and deliberate media manipulation. Therefore, Mrs. Trump is held civilly liable and must provide compensation for reputational harm." His words echoed like a verdict carved into stone. The tension snapped. Applause erupted, not the kind of cheering that follows victory, but the kind that comes when justice finally takes a breath. Senators tapped their desks, reporters looked up from their screens, and a few people simply closed their eyes in relief. The cameras captured every detail, the tears, the exhaustion, the strange calm that settled over the chamber. Jasmine nodded slightly, then sat back down, her shoulders lowering for the first time in hours. Ivanka stood still, eyes downcast, as if realizing what she had finally lost wasn't just a case, but the illusion of control. Within minutes, headlines flashed across every screen in the nation. CNN, NBC, the New York Times, all carried the same breaking banner: justice live and unscripted. And in that Capitol chamber, beneath blinding lights and the hum of history, two women stood as symbols of a truth America couldn't look away from. Power must answer to conscience, even when it trembles. The gavel's final strike still echoed through the marble chamber when the heavy doors opened and chaos swallowed the hall. Reporters flooded the corridors like a tidal wave, cameras flashing, microphones stretching forward in a wall of noise. The air outside the hearing room was electric, shouting questions. Footsteps, the sound of history trying to document itself in real time. Security struggled to hold the line as the crowd pressed closer. The world had just witnessed one of the most shocking hearings in modern America, and no one was leaving without a statement. Ivanka Trump emerged first, her white suit immaculate, but her eyes distant, heavy. Flashbulbs exploded around her like gunfire. The reporters screamed her name, questions colliding midair. "Mrs. Trump, do you plan to appeal? Was the verdict fair? Are you stepping down from your media company?" She stopped for only a moment, her voice calm, but stripped of the rehearsed polish she once carried. "I will cooperate fully with the committee's ruling," she said, "and I will donate all of this year's profits to a fund supporting women who have been defamed in media." The cameras erupted again, her words echoing across every news feed in America. She didn't take another question. Her car door closed softly behind her, a sharp contrast to the storm outside. Minutes later, Jasmine Crockett stepped through the same doorway, met by a blinding wall of lights. The noise hit her like a wave, dozens of reporters shouting, "Congresswoman Crockett, do you have any comment? Do you feel victorious?" She raised one hand, motioning for calm, her voice low, but steady enough for every microphone to catch it. "I didn't win a lawsuit," she said. "I just helped America look in the mirror." The words landed like thunder. The reporters froze for half a second before the typing began again, a frenzy of headlines forming in real time. By sunrise, her quote had taken over every front page. The Washington Post: Crockett, "I helped America look in the mirror." The New York Times: "When justice spoke softly, but the world heard it." Time magazine would later call it the most replayed sentence in modern congressional history. Across living rooms, diners, and offices, Americans debated not just the case, but the meaning of responsible speech. Talk shows that once thrived on scandal shifted tone overnight. The View, Good Morning America, even late-night hosts opened with monologues about accountability instead of gossip. News panels discussed the ethics of platforming humiliation for ratings. "We built an industry on outrage," one anchor admitted. "Now it's asking if that's entertainment or cruelty." The ripple spread to corporate America. Within a week, several major advertisers withdrew from programs known for exploiting public feuds. Networks issued statements about reevaluating creative direction and implementing ethical review boards. The term media morality became the most searched phrase on Google that month. Then came the image that defined the movement. Time released its next issue with Jasmine on the cover, standing under the Capitol dome, backlit by sunlight captioned in bold, "The woman who put words on trial." It sold out in 2 hours. Elder Americans, many who had lived through the civil rights era, found something familiar in her fight. At churches and community centers, older men and women shared clips of the hearing on their phones. One retired activist in Atlanta said on live TV, "We heard words change America once before. Today we've seen it happen again." Pastors quoted Jasmine in Sunday sermons. Veterans wrote open letters praising her courage. Professors used the case to teach the intersection of speech morality and law. "It's not about censorship," one professor said. "It's about conscience." Online, the younger generation took the message and ran with it. On TikTok, millions of videos looped Jasmine's line, "Dignity is not entertainment set to music, remixed into songs, quotes, and edits with movie soundtracks." Teenagers and creators across continents use the hashtag "Dignity is not entertainment," turning it into a global trend. Within days, the quote spread to Europe, Asia, and Latin America, translated into 20 languages. Memes, art posters, protests, chants all bore Jasmine's words. Meanwhile, Ivanka Trump disappeared from television. She declined interviews, canceled appearances, and retreated from the spotlight that once fed her empire. For weeks, paparazzi photos showed her leaving meetings quietly, always in black, always expressionless. Then one morning, the Wall Street Journal broke the story Ivanka had founded a nonprofit called the Better Voices Initiative, dedicated to teaching responsible communication in the media industry. The mission statement read, "Power should amplify truth, not distort it." Critics called it reputation repair. Others called it redemption. Months later, she sent a formal invitation to Jasmine Crockett, requesting her presence at the launch event. The letter ended with a single line, "If my words once divided us, I hope my actions can bridge what's left." Whether Jasmine replied, no one ever found out. But Jasmine's focus had already turned towards something larger. Standing again before Congress, she introduced the Crockett Amendment, Accountability in Public Speech. Her speech was brief but piercing. "Freedom of speech protects the speaker," she said. "Accountability protects the listener." The bill proposed financial penalties for any public broadcast that intentionally used hate stereotypes or personal humiliation for profit. The debate was fierce, but the public support was overwhelming. When the vote came, the result was historic: 78% in favor, crossing party lines in a rare moment of unity. The chamber erupted in applause as the headline flashed across news tickers nationwide: "Congress passes Crockett Amendment, a new era for media ethics." Commentators called it the second moral turning point of the century. Outside the Capitol, crowds gathered holding signs that read, "Respect is not optional." News anchors, activists, and even rival politicians praised Jasmine for sparking a cultural shift. For once, America wasn't just talking about scandal, it was talking about decency. And in homes across the country, especially among the 50-plus generation, people nodded in quiet agreement. They had lived long enough to see many speeches, many promises, but few moments when words themselves were held accountable. As one old man in Detroit said in an interview, tears in his eyes, "We've waited decades to see truth win, not by shouting louder, but by standing taller." That night, as the Capitol lights burned against the dark Washington sky, both women, the accuser and the accused, had changed the nation in ways no one could have scripted. One with courage, the other with humility. And together they left behind a reminder that echoed from the marble halls to every living room in America: words matter, always have, always will. Years passed, but the echoes of that hearing never faded. The case of Crockett versus Trump became more than a courtroom battle. It became a cornerstone of modern ethics. Across the United States, universities added it to their media law and communication programs. Professors called it the day America redefined responsibility. Lecture halls filled with students studying every transcript, every frame of footage. The first lesson of the course bore a name that would never leave history. The day America crossed the line between free speech and accountability. It was no longer a controversy, it was a legacy. In the Smithsonian's Museum of American History, a photograph was placed in the central gallery. The image showed Jasmine Crockett standing tall at the witness table, Ivanka Trump seated across from her, eyes wide, not with defiance, but realization. Visitors often stopped before the display, reading the caption beneath "When words met justice." School tours paused there. Veterans and journalists stood in silence. It had become a relic of conscience, proof that even televised conflict could spark cultural reform. One bright afternoon, Jasmine stood on the stage of Howard University, her alma mater. The hall overflowed with students, faculty, and cameras. She didn't need notes. Her tone was soft, deliberate, each word landing like a stone in still water. "We cannot ban people from speaking," she said, "but we can demand they take responsibility when their words become wounds." The sentence hung in the air for a full beat before the audience rose to their feet, clapping, cheering, some even crying. The standing ovation lasted minutes. To them, she wasn't just a congresswoman, she was living proof that integrity could still change the world. Years later, in a quiet hotel ballroom in Geneva, Ivanka Trump appeared at a closed-door summit on media ethics. Her hair was tied back, her demeanor reserved. Gone was the shine of celebrity. What remained was humility. When she spoke, the room held its breath. "I once thought that speaking louder was power," she said, her voice low but clear. "But Jasmine taught me that knowing when to stay silent, that's the real strength." No one clapped immediately. The silence was respectful, contemplative, heavy. Some said it was the first time Ivanka's words carried truth rather than image. July 31st, the date of the original hearing, became known in the media world as the Day of the Voice. Each year, networks replayed key moments from that day. On social media, millions shared the final clip where Jasmine, framed by the congressional lights, declared free speech is not a shield to hide behind, it's a mirror to look into. That sentence had become part of school mottos, protest signs, and murals in cities around the world. People quoted it not just in debates but in daily life, reminding one another that every word carries a consequence. And on the anniversary broadcast, every channel returned to the same closing scene, the image that started it all. Jasmine stood beneath the white light of the Capitol chamber microphone, before her face calm and radiant. Across from her, Ivanka sat quietly, eyes lifted toward the woman she once mocked, no longer adversarial, but accepting. The camera panned slowly across the room as the lights dimmed, the image fading into history. Then came the final line, glowing in white across the black screen. "In America, even a whisper can shake a dynasty and rebuild a conscience." The screen went dark, but the message lived on, echoing through classrooms, homes, and hearts, a reminder that justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it simply speaks, and the world listens. Thank you for watching until this moment, and for standing with us on this journey for justice. Your support means everything. Like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss what's next. And we'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment below and let us know what moved you most in this story. Together, our voices make a difference.